Excellent. Thank you very much, Ali, for giving me this opportunity, and also this particular university for trusting me to teach the fourth year group at this point of time. In the last 15 years, I've been talking about strength-based practice, and a couple of my articles probably have been seen or downloaded probably 30,000 times. And that's because I have written it in a very, very basic language, and I've also made sure that people are in a position to get themselves attracted towards practicing it, rather than just try and say, you know, I've got this framework and I've worked from a strength-based practice. It's not easy to practice from a strength-based practice. So that's the first line. That is, it's not that easy for you to practice. So you've got to really pick it up and try and see how it can happen. It can happen from your family. It can happen with your colleagues. It can happen just with yourself. And also definitely at some point of time with the clients, customers, consumers that we generally tend to work with. People have some training, I know for sure. And I also believe that strength-based practice is not just one of those concepts of, you know, it's an opportunity for us to take it as a framework. That's one way of looking at it. Second thing is there are a whole lot of things that go inside. Some people say it's like a kacha-pacha. It's like a hodgepodge. It's not one of those theorems with which we can walk away. It can be anything, as long as it works. That's the first thing. Second thing, it has that opportunity to give you and yourself and the clients a positive opportunity to engage, an opportunity to look forward to, an opportunity to put and bring something from your coping skills and move towards a little more resilience. But then again, there are a few things about it. There's no reservoir of coping that you can always draw from. You've got to replenish it. There is some time or the other, you've got to take some time to look for and start saying, hey, this is a skill, I'm going to save it for tomorrow so that I can draw it. So these are a few stories that I'll probably be telling you. And I run these programs for 2 days, and I run them from Townsville, Mount Isa to Brisbane. That's been my living for a long time now. And I do it right from CEOs to that of the community themselves in each of those agencies. So I start at the higher levels so that people get to know in a nutshell as to what I'm doing at the grassroots, because everybody needs to know who is being trained, why is he being trained, and what is the overarching goal in which the organization needs to move. So I take one of those top-down approaches as well. So I give the freebie to the top people by telling them, you got to know why you are paying me and for whom am I training, what am I doing with these people, and what implications are there at the end of the day when we train the entire mob in strength-based practice. What happens? What are the implications? So that's the kind of thing that I generally do. And hopefully we will run a little bit of an introduction because we are now in fourth year and we are entering into the practice. And most of you are already practitioners one way or the other. It's just that AASW degree and the stamping is what you require. So what I'm going to talk to you is, might appeal to you at the same time. It can also run a bit of a parallel thought in you because you already know some of these things. It'll just be a bit more refreshing. So let's hope we move through that. Now, this is what I intend doing. It's basically an overview of the principles and processes. And the aim of strength-based practice is share the power that you have got and how to create change. This particular PowerPoint is already loaded onto our system. It's part of our unit. And at some point of time, maybe it'll be open to everybody so you don't have to really take too many notes on it. And I'm one of those fellows. I put everything that I teach is on Creative Communications license. Anybody can take anything that I do, use it, as long as you can always bring your own experiential stuff and add to that. So what is strength? We generally know what strengths are. People will always say, being an intellectual could be strength, being beautiful could be strength, being, fat and tall and being in a position to hit somebody could be strength. So there are many, many kinds of strengths. But what we need to probably look at is intellectual capacities, physical capacities, and interpersonal skills and communications. These are basically what we would generally call them strengths. And what else are strengths? In the community, colleagues, friends, family, information, knowledge, materials that we have got, all those things, we would also consider them to be our strengths. On the top of that, I load this slide, which talks about motivations for anybody. That's about what is the motivation. It's about aspirations, it's about hopes, it's about dreams that we all have. How do we think about it? What do I want to be? And then we also want to talk about your interests and concerns and try and see how they relate to the values that we've got. Right. The philosophy behind strength-based practice is to recognize that there is nobody who does not have strength. Instead of putting it in a negative way, we just say everybody has strengths. We also talk about people can change because people are ultimately the ones who need to change in order to do something or the other. People grow through strengths and capacities, and people are experts on their own situation. So doing that is not that easy. If people are experts, why am I being hired? I get hired, you get hired. You get a wage and I get a wage. But the whole idea is that at a point of time, when a person has a problem, he also knows how that bug, that niggle, that problem, that concern can also be fixed. It's just that he's blinded at that point of time. When he approaches you, when you are seeing a client at that point of time, he doesn't probably know how to actually do the jigsaw. He knows if he does this in a particular way, he can easily get through the puzzle. So what we are talking about is, in very, very simple things like, you have a headache. One of our students said she has a headache, but certainly it's not going to be fixed immediately. But she knows that she's prepared and she's come into this particular class. So she would have done maybe a little bit of caffeine. She would have had a paracetamol somewhere there, or maybe some other Panidine Forte or something or the other. So we do take a little bit of those precautions because we are aware. But if you are not aware at that point of time, or you've slipped your mind to take that paracetamol, then what we are looking forward to is give you that little bit of knowledge at that moment. So the enabler who is looking after in a strength-based perspective is moving you from your awareness to an educational level. That's all that you are trying to do. Once upon a time in the early 90s, 1970s, I did contribute a very small theory, which was taken away right up to United Nations. It was called Panchashila of development. Basically, Panch means 5, not the punch, but the Indian punch means 5. Shila means the principles, not the Shila that we talk about in the Western world. Panchashila. It's also Indonesian. Shila means principles. 5 principles of empowerment. The first one is awareness. Awareness is all about what you know about yourself, what you know about that particular problem, etc. The next one is education. The education part is about the problem as well as how probably you need to solve the problem. So what we try to do in strength-based practice is check with the individual Is he aware that he has a problem? Then number 2 is, does he have any further awareness that this problem can be solved? In other words, does he know the steps? Does he have the education to deal with the problem? So awareness leads to education. Having led the second step, education leads to building confidence or self-confidence. Awareness to education, education to self-confidence. Okay, so then we move on to the next one. So what does a person feel? I feel confident now. Why? Because I knew what was bugging me, and I also now know a process through which I can move on. How did you get to that? Because we have had a conversation. So we've done those 3. So what happens? Then I feel empowered. I certify myself as a person who knows how to deal with a particular problem. Then I move to the 5th step, which is action. Awareness, education, self-confidence, empowerment, and action. That is the 5 principles through which I try to teach community. I used to teach community development in the countries, and I used to do that. And I used to tell people, when you give a hand shake, which hand do you give? I always tell, people will always say, yes, we give right hand. But then I used to ask people, all right, look at a hand and draw it on a piece of paper. Most people are right-handed, so they put their left hand and start drawing the contours. Then I ask them, you don't do this. You don't give a left hand in community development. You give a right hand in community development. And when you do shake somebody's hand, what you do is you shake like this, and you also bring your hand closer to him, and you probably hold it together. When you do that, you are actually transferring your strength. You are actually doing something more than just talking to him. Your humility, your values, everything that you want to do is being transferred. So when you hold somebody together, that person feels, wow, this guy means something, and he's obviously going to offer me something. It is these areas when we touch and communicate. These are, what they call dimples or something. When they touch, there is ecstatic electricity that passes on. In very, very simple terms, and that's the only way communities develop. The expert goes to the community and holds hands exactly in this way. So there is a humility and there is a knowledge that passes on. So that's the way you need to look at from a strength-based perspective, that what am I doing to this individual? Am I still sitting in this kind of a gap chair? Or am I trying to come up to that particular level? Then the next part is, how do you see the problem? Do you see the problem as a problem? The person is not the problem. If we understand that very, very clearly, we need to demonstrate that we understand that clearly. In the corridors, when you pass through child safety, in the corridors of our mental health, in corridors of our hospitals, our language doesn't tell me that we see it like this. Our language, because I worked 15 years in the government, in various departments, we have always seen that there's a different jargon that we have used. A jargon that, unfortunately, is in line with abuse. So the one who is closest, including therapist, can also be an abuser. And we need to watch the language that we use. So problems can blind people from noticing their strengths. That's exactly what I said in the beginning. I'm aware that I have got something bugging me, but I'm not aware that this is because of a bad habit of mine. 11 o'clock in the night, if I'm watching TV and I'm not able to sleep well and constantly do that, what's my problem? The problem is I'm not sleeping well. No, the problem is I've got a wrong habit. At 11 in the night, I'm watching those television shows. Probably I need to do something else. So when will I, in my diagnosis, as so-called expert, along with the client, come down to that? So we will move a little further into that. When people appreciate their strengths, they are free to learn and grow. Understanding social work principles, basically. Each person is unique. That's what all of our social work talks about. People make sense of experience in their own way. People's strengths and capacities, aspirations, experiences, these are very, very important for them. People are their own experts. So do we let them do whatever they want? No, we do. We still have a role to play. If they are experts, then why are we there? That's another question which people used to always ask me. They are experts to the extent they know what the problem is. They also know the solution. But you come down with your neoliberalism, you have got all those various kinds of fun things around. You don't have much money with you. So you will say, if housing is a problem, and you don't have, he knows he needs to move into a proper place to go. But you don't have funding. So you're going to work around. So strength-based practice also teaches people, you and them, the clients, to organize around the resources that we have got. It's not expecting that you're going to bring the resources because we believe in the 5 principles of empowerment. Everything has to be brought from a well where there is a resource. If it isn't there, then we've got to think about some other place from where it can be brought. To a lot of extent, it could be personal coping. To a lot of extent, it could also be adjustments that people need to make over a period of time. Our approach, if it is power over somebody, it assumes a right to control others. And we do that. Correctional field. I've been supervising that field. Unfortunately, it is control. But what could you do? There are certain limitations in some fields. There's deviance, so therefore it needs to be brought down too. There's a certain amount of freedom within the organizational context that needs to be utilized. You can do what you can within the ambit. Otherwise, you can't, obviously. You have the system which will automatically come to us. Negates, limits the rights to resources and participation and self-determination. It sets up agenda and expects compliance from groups and individuals. Yes, it does that. At what time? When we talk about child safety, for instance, some of you will be going into that placement. Some of you may have worked in those areas. I work for sure, right from grassroots at the coal face to management. I've seen it. So what happens there is, it is after a fact that we are talking about child. It's after a fact. The facts are that there has been an alleged abuse, or there has been an abuse of some nature. So we are now trying to mitigate, manage how to deal with the parents or the child, with the child and the child's behavior. So in those situations, we have freedom, surely. We can't put everything back. So we need to work around as to what are those things that can be put back and what are the things that we probably need to work around. Power over also rests on the view that our way is the best and we know what's best for others, a position of superiority. I've seen that happen as a senior of discipline in child safety. When I used to go to some of those major meetings, I could easily say many of the area managers trying to simply say, that can't be done, that can't be done. Now, if I ask why not, because I'm at the same level. they will say, I don't think we need this senior of discipline in our region. We need to transfer him away. They'll go to the regional director. So how do I approach when I'm going to get a very strong why not from their side, and I have a stronger why not? The only way probably I need to do is assertively build it, but at the same time, show it to them that there are other ways by which this can be done. I have to demonstrate how it needs to be done. And I used to demonstrate even the entry of a social worker who is called family support officer or a child support officer, along with the policeman, into a scenario where there is domestic violence, children need to be picked up. I used to demonstrate to them, go closer to the person. He's not going to beat you. The policeman probably, if he goes closer, there's a different issue. You go closer. I'm not asking you to go and hug somebody who's probably, at that moment, in a very, very irritated mood. It's got, drug smell and everything else, but just go closer. I'm sorry. Just say, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? The social workers asked me, why should I say sorry? Yes, you can. I'm sorry I had to come and, into this scene. I can't say everything will be all right, but at this point of time, I need to pick up this kid. We'll come back to you on Monday. On Monday, we'll meet and we'll talk about it. Why? Those two sentences instead of the usual stuff that you read out. What will that do? Monday morning, you would find mom and dad actually come there to wherever you've asked them to come, a little better placed to communicate with you. You lose your communication along with the police right in that particular moment if you just let police who have come to pick up the kid and to think that policemen are there to save you from a big bash from the clients. The clients will never beat you because the police are already there. It's taken for granted. You're not understanding the strength and the power of the system. Understand that, don't denounce it, but don't announce it and take it up. Don't exaggerate the policeman's presence there and feel empowered. Your empowerment is still in that intrinsic human value that you can show, because at some point of time, what's your job? Not to keep the child until he's 18 years old with the guardian. You want to return him at some point of time. However bad, however sad the family is, the stupid mom and dad, they still love their child. There are those values out there. You got to work on those kind of motivations, and you got to see those motivations. So I used to train these people where it was possible to let them understand that the power over that we have, which is intentional or unintentional, it always comes up, and then you enjoy that. Somebody, when I asked them, can you introduce yourself? What's your daily work like? They said, oh, I enjoy that. When I go to, in one of my visits, I actually go escorted by the police. I said, oh, you take pride that you go along with policemen into some family, and yes, why not? So, that's the kind of orientation that they've got, which means that's an orientation which is a non-social work orientation. Because we have also introduced non-social workers into child safety department a fair few years ago. Can't blame those people because that's what you've been told. You got to look after yourself. It's fine, but at the same time, you've got to look at the higher purpose for which we are there. Power over, I have all the answers. I know what the problem is. I know what's bugging you. I can fix it. I've got a Saridon. I've got a, Astro, whatever tablet that I've got. Know what the solution is and how to reach it. Know why things are there, in what way they are. Most experts work with that sort of a attitude, power over, which is violence, not listening, assuming to know what's best for others, people, what's wrong with them, and people, what to do and how to do. Most experts also work with power over strategies in a different way. They exclude people, they limit the participation of people. They decide whom to ask, whom not to ask. A bridge is going to be built. How many times the city council comes around and it just calls you, a few people very specifically. You guys come around because you've always been talking to us in a very supportive way. A real community development, they announce a notice saying that we're going to build a bridge here. Anybody who's got objections, come around. Very few people go to those meetings. Why? Because anyway that bridge is going to be built. It's a between Labour and Liberal Party or something or the other that's happening. So people probably have understood government does this for a tokenism. That conversation may not necessarily be one which is going to reflect what I want to have. Because what I want to have, maybe I can take it straight away to my member of parliament, if he is listening to, and if he is in that constituency, and I can go and move and take something or the other. Because I have attended some of the public meetings where the same people are seen. And I used to wonder what this is all about. And as if there's a kind of a nexus. Because all you need is about 8 or 10 people around there who just say, oh, all is good. And then you get through that. So there are difficulties. We work for the government. We work in the non-governmental organizations through government money. We don't raise our own money. In Australia also, very little bit of money is raised in the non-governmental organizations. We just work and duplicate, replicate the same kind of work. So therefore, huge conversations on autonomy, freedom, human rights, and all of that, I think becomes a bit more meaningless. So in order to make it meaningful, then you got to start with our own existing values and perhaps at a much more humbler pace. So therefore, some of these things like giving unsolicited advice, telling people what their strengths are, imposing views and plans for strategies for change is not something that we would want to have. Then, of course, you also have a hierarchical approach that tries to tell people. And this is a conversation that we always have in our corridors when we are passing through. Oh, that mother, that dad. The way he was looking at me when he came into the meeting. So you start off with the way, it's okay. We are human beings too. We also get bugged. We also can become emotional. But then it's a training. It's constantly ensuring that we speak a language, even in the initial stages, even if it becomes hypocritical for you to start off, it becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes a value. And once it becomes a value, nobody can change that. You'll always come out by saying later on, I like you very much, but you are a bit intense. You are a bit rude, or you at least come out as if you are rude. I want you to come down. I don't want you to be so impositional. So you will be able to speak to somebody in that way, provided you yourself show a language, a difference in the language, which will be strength-based practice. Conditions have changed. Why would I change? If you make me feel safe, I'll change. If you trust me, I will change. If you give me a space to change, I will change. How can I change? How can I provide the best child-safe institute, child-safe home? You take away my child. As soon as you take away whatever little support money that I used to get because children are at home, that's cut away. I can't buy toys when they want to come back and play. I can't change anything. Then you ask me to go to parenting training. Damn it, those classes are not available to me now when I want to do it. The Queensland University's 3P training doesn't come to me now. I need it now. And if I don't prove it, you won't bring back my child. So where's your coordination? What are you talking about? A client has a right to ask these questions. But that client has been disempowered already. You took the child away. Centrelink takes the money away. The neighbors blame the family. Left, right, and center, something else happens. The partner runs away as a result of whatever has happened. My children, your children, somebody else's children. All of that kind of scenario has already taken place. In that scenario, when you are going, where's your empathy? How do you go about generalizing things? How do I go about supporting all these arrangements? How do we go about within that system where we are talking about within the system? How do we generate somebody's empowerment without understanding? So where are we? Who are we working for? One of the major questions for social work for the last 30 years I've been asking in Australian social work is, who do you work for? You don't work for the clients. You work for the government. You work for the system. Client seems to become incidental. That without him, the system couldn't work because system is generated out there for you to work, organize, pathologize, look after. We need to do some introspection altogether. We need to, every now and then, assertively generate that compassion within us and a passion that will always tell you that client is the reason why the system is there. System employs me because of that particular person. And I still feel that we are not doing right by the client. There are some things that we are doing right, we are not doing a full right. So it is in that kind of a space, it is in that kind of a continuum that you need to be constantly generating your language in such a way that you can manage everything else. Just by the way, I used to tell people, you want the best for your client, and you got a team leader on the top, and the team leader may agree, may not agree with what you want to give. How do you propose to your team leader what you want for the client? The team leader might tell you, yeah, it's a nice idea. I'm not too sure whether the manager will agree. She might come up with that kind of a statement. Instead, manage your team leader. Ask a question. You know what? How will your regional director support you? What kind of an argument you want from me so that the regional director supports you so that I get support from my client? Go one step ahead. Manage your team leaders. Manage your area managers. Don't let them manage you. A grassroots person can assertively take the power that is coming from the top is triangle. I want you to do the power from down below in a completely different way. All you need to do is sharpen your language, build yourself, be assertive, and think about all those nice stories which can move up. Tell people, hey, what would it take for you to be positive towards my client? I'm sure you would like to be positive towards my client. So you bribe what needs to happen You do the sweet talk where it needs to take place. You take the bread knife, only apply honey. I don't care what you do, but do it in such a way that the system can evolve, dissolve, and give you the support that you require. That's the only way. So what happens at the end of the day? They'll say, oh, you're a bit dodgy. Somehow you get your stuff. That's okay. You're a subversive social worker. You must be a subversive social worker. A strength-based practitioner is a subversive social worker. In fact, he's even a disruptive social worker. He's always causing change. And if you don't do that, wider doors are available for you to become a bureaucrat. And you will become a bureaucrat. Conditions for change: an appreciation of an ability to mobilize my own strength, knowing what to do and how to do it. If I'm aware of my problem, and if I know the skills through my education, and if my confidence has been built, and if my action program is being supervised, I'm empowered automatically. Within those 5 principles, I would possibly be doing something or the other. If I'm a participant in the change process, if I'm the one to change, and you want to change me, it may not work. If I'm actually involved in the whole change processes, I could do it. I could actually vividly demonstrate to a whole lot of my people in the past in the government that look at the way on Monday morning when we went to the court, how decently dressed were the parents the way they came. Although I could still see the black eye here, the wounded person here. But they came neat and clean to present themselves before the magistrate. They had a reason. They probably need not even come. They could have let the child go away for a little while, but they are concerned. That's the way I would prove it to them. Conditions for power. Back again, these are social work principles and associated.
Just getting rid of that. Thanks.
Okay. We talk about right to self-determination, respect for people's dignity, valuing what we have got in common, creation of interdependence and everything else, and then throw it away. So we need to be conscious about some of these things, which is again the same slide, which is about uniqueness and communication. And here is one of those important things. When people talk about strength-based practices, people think that we only need to talk about strengths, whether we look at the deficits or not. Surely we do, but we look at them from in a context. If anybody had a negative experience, as a result of that negative experience, the opportunities that they have get blocked. They would never think of anything else that can happen. I lose here, I will think I might lose there, I might lose there. And that's the way orientation is. And it generally, in a situation like that, it lowers your expectations. It generates a negative behavior. You start focusing on deficits. And you can see the entire circle, the way it moves, it keeps circulating in that way. It's not a circle though, but it explains to you what exactly happens. So in fact, even if you were to have a few of these things just templated and kept in your writing somewhere, you can start feeling in your diagnosis what exactly is happening with the clients that we are looking at. Then look at the other one, which is what I would call the competency cycle. When issues are there, when there is some problem which is there, or an issue, concern, whatever it is, what we are doing is we are not even actually worrying about it. We just kept it aside. We are looking at what we would call identification of strengths of that particular person. And then we generate positive expectations. We look at opportunities for development, and we also look at the way these things can come up. I'll give you an example for this, but I just want you to look at the competency cycle. And since it's already in your notes, at some point of time, you can go back to that. Now, the other thing, of course, is in the strength-based practices, as I said, it's just in an overarching various theories. So one of them uses solution-based solution-focused practice. We also use medical approach. We use a lot of things, all of them put into it. And what it does is basically identify strengths and work through that. Solution-focused practice, to me, looks like is practice concerned with how solutions work rather than how problems work. Knowing what will be different when the problem is absent is more important than understanding the causes. I remember a situation where we were talking to a family in one of the family meetings back in child safety. And when we were talking about it, she said, when grandmother was there, things were different. So I noted down grandmother was there. That's all. I parked it somewhere. That means at this point of time, in the problem situation, there is an existing deficit. There isn't somebody who can basically look after and help them. So similarly, you know a few of those things, and then you leave them there. Then you start conversation in such a way. So what would you like to see? What would be the end? What would be the outcome that you would like to have? Not the outcome of this meeting, because there is no outcome for this meeting. We are all sitting here. Again, we'll meet another 6 months. Let's say whatever. When do you think everything will be in a kind of a happy situation? When is it last that you as a family went to Dream World? And what were the kind of conditions when you all guys went to Dream World? Is it money? Is it that there was a real family kind of an orientation? Is there some support? What would it take now for all of you to go back to Dream World? Can you really reconstruct that? So then we look at those strengths. Then we try and see what is it that's not available. That I will try to fix it up, rather than think in terms of the current problem. The current problem has nothing to do with going to Dream World. The current problem is child behavior, domestic violence, hell of a lot that has happened. Who's looking after it? The entire child safety department can look at it. But as a social worker, I'm interested in the aspirations of this particular family. They will get to that. If they have that dream, these things become incidental. We can deal with the legislative bugs. We can deal with the current concerns only if you have an aspiration. You want to get the child back home, you need to build those conditions. If you need to build those conditions, you need to tell me that there were those conditions once upon a time. Once upon a time, we were a great family. Okay, so what were those great conditions at that point of time? Could we return to those times? What would it take for us to go back to that particular story? How will I rebuild those things? So I'm going to engage in one of those very, very narrative processes, very, very qualitative processes, and that's where I'll spend more of my time. That's clear. Solution focused is on what people are doing when the problem is absent or less of a problem than when problems are otherwise available. So, in a nutshell, I'm not too sure how I'm running with the time. Somebody will tell me. Listening, developing, identifying, again identifying, mobilizing, reviewing, and evaluating. These are the main goals in the strength-based practice. Constantly listening to the people, listening to their people's stories, what they are, What is the core strength of that? Just picking up those things and giving them the concern and actually enjoying. It is quite possible for us to understand and enjoy, not to look at that particular individual from a problem perspective. So adding value to people's strength.
Your first part of your presentation, time's up, I think. You're supposed to go to 11.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I took up about 5 or 10 minutes of your time.
Okay.
So you.
Okay. People's strengths and capacities, people's own resources. Then we bring these community resources and the specialist resources. So the foundations which are based, the foundations on which this is based is just practice, which means obviously the right type of practice that we need. Self-determination of people is important for us. Sharing power with is important for us. Collaboration and partnership. Transparency. That's a very important thing. I can be transparent even if I am working in the system by letting them know this is the rule book. This is me. This is you. We need to work with the rule book. At the same time, we need to respect your sentiments. And then how do we go about doing it? Okay, so as far as listening is concerned, 3 basic elements. Their stories are important to us, their capacities are important, and their aspirations and goals. Now, there are a few stories which are out there. You can actually look at them because the entire PowerPoint is also in your course outline, plus in the unit that you'll be doing. And essentially, the 2 stories that I've taken about are about a village, what happens in that particular village. They had some problems. When they had the problems, instead of looking at the problems, I've asked them, what is it that they would like to have? What is it that they would like to see? They wanted, breakfast to be available at a particular place. They wanted the community pastor, the church pastor, to be in a position to come around. They wanted to see that, a cafeteria which is being run by a young couple from an LGBT background shouldn't be vandalized. They wanted plants and other things to be, not to be removed away and everything else. So how do they work towards that? So that's the whole goal. Instead of presenting them as a problem, we want to go and present them as what would you like to see, and then work backwards. So that's the example that we have seen. So the community, last year, the local priests stopped coming to do services. Now they send a church leader instead who visits for readings and an afternoon study circle. It's not the same anymore. So that's the way a deficit is presented. So I'll skip this slide, but basically we go to this slide which says people's vision of what they want things to be like. A description of what will be happening when the issues are resolved, and how will they be feeling what will they be doing? Those are the kind of 2 interrelated questions that we have, and then move on. So people feel proud of the community and hopeful. Our streets are beautiful, lined with trees. The church is working. The council and the local community has developed the area. A cooperative has come around. People are having breakfast. Young people are not vandalizing anymore. So that's what we want. Police Youth Association has come forward. So solution search will happen if only aspiration is there. If there is no aspiration, you will be fixing deficits. It costs more money to fix deficits. It costs less money to fix aspirations. I'll stop there because the slides are around, and I'm going to spend the whole year with you. Whatever is left for the rest of the time. I'm a narrator. I'm a storyteller. We will enjoy the rest of the time. Thank you.
Thank you.